with the recording that has just started. Thank you, Katarina, and everyone in the room. Yeah, this meeting is being recorded, and we can share it again with you all after. So welcome again. Lovely to see everybody, or virtually kind of see everybody. And we'll kick straight off into our program for today. And we've got a great program, and we are going to dive straight in with a quick welcome. This particular project is the National Circular Economy Stakeholder Dialogue, conducted by the African Circular Economy Network and Circular South Africa for GIZ in partnership with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. This is a fabulous series of events that we're doing, and so please stay tuned. We do have a number of other webinars coming with a final in-person event towards the end, but Kira will give us a little bit more about that. So we've got some fabulous speakers, and I'm going to essentially move straight into ask Dr. Junitha Badul to welcome us all today. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Badul.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction, Sally, and welcome to this first virtual session on circular economy principles and uptake within the agricultural sector. I must also acknowledge our partner, the German Technical Agency, with whom we are partnering to actually bring this series of virtual sessions. And as Sally Ann has indicated, we have ASEN as well as Circular South Africa assisting us with facilitating these sessions. Now, as you may be aware, the concept of circular economy is, places emphasis on resource efficiency through designing waste out of a system, obviously minimizing the use of virgin material and keeping material use for as long as possible within a particular system. And as such, many of us who are familiar with the waste hierarchy itself in terms of avoidance, reduction, reuse, recycling, refurbishment, etc., have some experience or are trying to delve in the space of how it could be applied across the different sectors. So we are hoping that through the series of dialogues, 4 of which will be virtual, with culminating in a physical session later this year, we will be able to actually discuss the opportunities as well as some of the challenges that have been experienced. We have a series of expert speakers who will be joining us in the different sessions. And specifically for this afternoon, I would also want to welcome the panelists who've taken the time out to make this session a success in discussing the topic at hand. I would want to also emphasize, although Sally will provide some background information in terms of the agricultural sector in South Africa, that currently the fuller sector is responsible for approximately 22% of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's quite staggering. Now, over and above that, we have to also take into consideration the fact that South Africa, having the agricultural sector as a key economic driver, has also substantively contributed. And as of 2021, the statistic is pointing at 0.5% of global emissions. So this being noted and taken into consideration, what are the opportunities that we could actually undertake in reducing our footprint within the agricultural sector itself? And what I want to also appeal to the participants is to participate actively in the discussions itself. And we're hoping that by you sharing your knowledge and perspectives around the different sectors that we will be discussing today, as well as in the near future on mining, manufacturing, and the energy sector, will provide us with insights on how certain imperatives could be put in place or objectives could be met as a result of adopting circularity across the sectors in South Africa itself. With that, I'm going to hand over back to Sally Ann, and I hope that you have a productive session. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Badul, for that great welcome. And I'm going to now ask Kira to just take us through just a bit more about the dialogue series, which has already been touched on. Kira, over to you.
Thanks so much, Sally and Dr. Badul. Yeah, welcome everyone. It's amazing to see so many people online and so many people hopefully sticking around to have some good engagement later, as Sally mentioned. Yeah, the main objectives for today, as you can see, are for this session to engage with a broader series on the circular economy in South Africa, but mainly to initiate cross-sectorial discussions and foster knowledge exchange about the circular economy. I think many of the people in this room will be really familiar with how siloed some approaches to development can be. And I think the whole point of the circular economy is that it doesn't really work unless we approach things from a whole system, and that requires us to bring down some of those silos. So that's really kind of the key step moving forward. This is then doubles up as then us raising awareness and information about the circular economy principles and interventions that promote the circular economy as a development tool for South Africa. So looking at the sectors that we have in the series, but then also really engaging with what the cross-cutting issues are. So like you'll see later today, we'll be speaking about water and what that means in the agricultural context. But, you know, as we know, we can't live without water. Circular water applies to all different parts of our sustenance and well-being, as does agriculture. And then really to bring together a diverse set of stakeholders around the different sectors and provide a collaborative platform around circularity. And that's where we would really love you guys to engage with as well when we have the whiteboard session later, is to really give all the different perspectives that you have and bring what you can to the table. I'm far from an agricultural expert, but I do understand circularity. And so kind of all the different pieces hopefully fit together. And then generally just feedback and input from stakeholders regarding the needs of circularity and regulatory policy support for circularity in South Africa, really trying to champion how we can move circularity forward together. Thanks, Sal. Yeah, and then so today we'll be chatting about agriculture as well as touching on some water components, but really looking at how the weaving between food security, entrepreneurship, and innovation works in the agricultural context. Reflecting on the systems view of what agriculture means for us from a whole country perspective, but then getting kind of deeper into what it means from an urban reflection. We'll have a recorded presentation from Prof. Nodia, who is involved with Izindaba Zokudla, which really engages with the food systems specifically in Soweto, and so reflecting on what that means in a Joburg context as well. Next week, we'll be having a session on mining, looking at raw materials and really getting into the nitty-gritty of the future of extraction. Then later in October, we'll have a session on manufacturing and energy, and then that'll all culminate in an in-person event on the National Circular Economy Dialogue. And that'll kind of be fitting all these different moving parts together and doing a whole high-level reflection and bringing it down into the granular, seeing how we can move forward together.
Thank you, Kira. So we're excited. I hope you're excited because we love seeing it all fit together, and we're really looking forward to that culmination at the in-person event at the end. So now it's poll time, and Katerina, if you could be our poll master, thank you. If you could please just tell us in terms of what is your current understanding of circularity? So you've got a few seconds there to just put your answer into the poll. Okay, how are we doing?
They're coming in so far.
They're coming in.
But we are more than 6 people on the webinar, so don't be shy. We
definitely are. Don't be shy, guys. Please do. Let us, just put it in. It doesn't matter if you are an absolute expert or if this is your first hearing about circular economy. We are just curious. In fact, circular economy, it can be quite a complex issue. And that's the whole point of these dialogues, is to really unpack it and make it understandable and accessible for all of us to understand. 21. Few more seconds.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to close it and the poll.
Okay, thank you.
Are you seeing the overview at the moment?
No, we still see the poll.
Okay, let me see if I can pull the results in the back end, because we had
Okay.
that problem in the morning as well.
All right. So maybe while we are doing that, should we carry on discussing?
Yeah,
Yes, I think let's do that. That's perfect. Thanks,
Let's
Sally.
do that. No problem. Okay, so essentially, I'm just going to provide a little bit of an overview of what is circularity. And this is very much, I suppose, what's great about circularity is that there are so many different people within this field, and that's because we all have a little part to play. There's not one right or one wrong answer when it comes to circularity. So I just want to maybe, and I think we all know intrinsically that, you know, our current economy simply cannot keep going in the same way going forward. We need to dramatically change the way we approach our linear economy. So we essentially take resources out of the ground, we put them through a process, we distribute them, we consume them, and we essentially are designing our products to be disposed. So we've got this, and think with this thought that we have this infinite supply of materials available at our disposal, but we know that's not the case. And I think we intrinsically also know that waste is actually a human concept. And often when we talk about circular economy, waste is often the entry point or the gateway to the discussion. And often that's where recycling comes through as well. But when we think about waste a little bit more deeply, it really is, it's a human concept. Nature itself doesn't know waste because in nature, waste equals food, right? Our economy is essentially built on this wasteful production of goods and services. And we've really just come to accept waste, pollution, and resource depletion as an unavoidable consequence of our modern society and economy. And we just manage it, right? Waste management. And it's a case of, I'm sure there's another way we can approach this. So, and, you know, we need to keep asking the question about why is this linear economy a problem? And this is a great example of how to illustrate that. And I'm not sure how many of you know about the Earth Overshoot Day. But it's a really interesting way of visualizing what the use of our natural resources and how Earth recovers from the use of those natural resources on a yearly basis. And it's just kind of a schematic to show that if we had to plot it for every single country, we would show a quite interesting picture as is shown here. And I'm not sure if you can spot where we are as South Africa. We're kind of about here. So the 20th of June this year, we essentially used all of the resources that we could take from the environment in South Africa, and we essentially living on debt for the rest of the year. So we have to, you know, essentially wait until the next year before we can get back into credit, as it were. But it's really humanity's demand for ecological resources and the services in a given year, and these are exceeded, and it will take the Earth longer to regenerate that in that year. So on a global level, Earth Overshoot Day landed on the 1st of August. So as you can see from a South African point of view, we kind of hit that mark a couple of months before. So what is the circular economy? And many of you on this call are probably very familiar, but really it is about designing out waste, keeping products and materials in use at their highest utility for the longest time, and regenerating natural systems. And I'm going to take you through a couple of quick steps here, just to show you a model from the UN, which has the UNEP, which has created a diagrammatic explanation for how the material flows in a more circular system. And let's just start with this linear approach, right? So we've seen that in that earlier diagram where we're looking at the extraction, production, the consumption and use, and then the end of use. And then we see a kind of stop, right? But what if we added in a few more steps? And we start building circularity in with reduced demand. And you can see that that loop is much, much closer to where the actual use phase is, right? So we've got the reduce and the reuse. Those are the central circles, and those are the most important within circularity. Then we've got the further circle cadence, which is essentially the repair, refurbish, and remanufacture. But can you see where the repurpose and the recycle loops are? They're sitting right on the edge, but it's often the very first thing that we think about when we're thinking about resources and material use. It's not a bad thing. It's just simply where we go to first, right? So when we then look a little bit deeper, should we not be looking at how we can change things upstream, further up the chain? And that's how we change things through design. So designing products and materials to enable them to flow through the system more efficiently, to be reused more effectively, and be designed for repairability and remanufacture. So that's ultimately what we're trying to do from a circularity perspective. What's missing though, right? All of this is very material focused, but we must remember that the system is really based on natural cycles of energy, water, biodiversity, and social. We're nature too. You know, we're part of the system, this dynamic system of moving parts. And so this next diagram is a different butterfly diagram. I'm sure many of you have seen the original butterfly diagram by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. But this one here, it brings the technical nutrients on the one side and the biological, but it puts it within our social system and our social elements that we all operate, because as people, we are part of this natural, beautiful, dynamic system that works around us. So the economy at the moment in South Africa is about 6% circular, and this is based on the material flow study done in 2017, which again is very material focused, but it provides a really good start and as a comparison as well to how we're competing globally, I suppose. And at the moment, we could probably do so much more, obviously. So we're 94% resource inefficiencies to target. So we've got lots of opportunities, right, to create value across all sectors in South Africa. And this can really look at increasing global competitiveness, improve food security, and that's what this webinar is all about today. Separating the economic development from energy and water needs. How about fair and equitable jobs, different work opportunities, increased profits potentially, living conditions and health, and other direct environmental benefits. So when we're looking at agriculture specifically, at the moment, many of our practices are very linear in the current approach. It's a vital economic sector, as we heard from Dr. Badul, in South Africa. I mean, it employs many, many people, just under, 870,000 people. The conventional farming methods, very monoculture focused, intensive water use, a lot of use of artificial fertilizers. And we throw a lot of food away every year, a third. But there are many people that are food insecure. So we've got so many people going hungry every day. So how can circularity change this? So we're going to introduce a couple of concepts today. We won't be able to get to everything, but we hope that this conversation just starts the dialogue, right? That's the whole point. So regenerative farming practices are one of those things, and really regenerative farming can assist to help improve soil health through low to no tillage practices, use of compost instead of artificial fertilizers, water conservation techniques, multi-crop farming, urban farming, by bringing farming to the urban environments, and so much more. So with that, I'm going to close off this very, very brief introduction and overview of circularity. And Katrina, maybe we can get the results of the poll, and then we'll move on to the quick next poll before we get onto our speakers. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let me share my screen on my side quickly. So I think you can see that I have tried to zoom in because it's actually very small. So I think this is better. So we can see the answers here. Interestingly, again, answers are it's a lot about resources. And we see some interesting answers about reusability of resources by repurposing them in different areas. grassroots innovation, which I think is quite a really nice answer. But also we have some people on the call that actually say they know very little or average about the circular economy. So that's really great to have you on board. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that I can actually load the second poll. Let me just go back. And then the next poll should show from your side.
Great, go for it. And while you are filling in that poll, what was interesting, thanks Siobhan for this comment. My biggest critique of circular economy is it often leaves out the just part of the conversation for workers' rights and human well-being. Absolutely. It's one of the things we would love to include in every project, that we need to have this discussion around the just transition. Yeah, so thanks for raising that.
Your microphone is a bit distorted. Do you think you can plug it in and plug it out again? Oh, plug it out and in again.
Mine?
Now it's perfect. Okay. It just sounded a bit of a robot voice coming through.
Sorry.
Perfect. I think we can give participants just a few more seconds, but I see the results are coming in, which is quite nice. And this time around, I think you should see the answers straight away on your screen already.
Really interesting answers coming through, I think. Yeah, I'd love to speak to everyone who's putting in these answers to ask them, tell me more, some examples. It sounds really cool.
Also very cool that there's such an even split. I think so much of the time in South Africa, we feel like everyone's working in waste specifically, but this is obviously showing that people are working across
100%.
Okay, cool. I think I'm going to stop the poll.
Great.
So that we can get to our next speaker.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Let's get back onto the presentation. All right, so on to our first speaker, and actually, Kira, over to you to assist, but let me first do the introduction, apologies. So Nadeem Milan, Prof. Milan, he's an academic and practitioner with wide practical and academic experience. He's the convener of Izindaba Zokudla, a multi-stakeholder engagement project that aims to create opportunities for urban agriculture in a sustainable food system. It uses social innovation events to reach its aims, which include food system transformation, sustainable enterprise creation, and the cultivation of communities of practice and innovation among participants in the food system in South Africa. I'm going to stop there in terms of the introduction, and Prof. Milan was called away. Unfortunately, there was a terrible clash with his time, unfortunately, but he has recorded his presentation, which we'll share with you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Let me just share my screen. And as Sally mentioned, yeah, his work with Izindaba Zokudla is phenomenal and really worth paying attention to. Let me just swap us over.
Good afternoon. I'm Nadeem Milan, Professor in Business Management at the University of Johannesburg. I'm also the project leader of Izindaba Zokudla, which is a research project that aims to create viable and circular urban agricultural enterprises. And we offer a comprehensive enterprise development course on campus in a monthly installments. Thank you very much for ACE for this opportunity, and my apologies. As we made the booking for this, I was sitting in a council meeting for the Agricultural Research Council, and as luck would have it, the appointments came at the same time, and I was severely double booked. So my apologies for not being there in person. I, however, would like to just discuss the basics about circular agriculture. And please forgive me if I'm talking quite high level. I do assume that you know a little bit about what a circular enterprise would be. So you do have my slides, so I'll be just following the slides as I go along. And just so we understand what are the real opportunities in agriculture for circular enterprises, and the opportunities are quite vast and far-ranging, and it has the potential to transform the way we produce food. So we need to understand circular agriculture, in the right way, and in a sense, you cannot understand it in any other way but in a circular way, because agriculture and ecological processes are inherently circular. And it is actually about tapping into the inherent productivity of these ecological processes, where the competitive advantage lies for enterprises in the agricultural space. So it's important to note that everything in the background is already circular. So what it means is we are losing value in the way we produce, because we kind of define agriculture as not being biological. So we deliberately exclude this from our frame of reference and our logic. But it also brings out the question, and why is this sustainable? And the reason it is sustainable is because of the comprehensive circulation of resources. Now, the ecosystem on Earth really has two sources of energy. The one is the sun. The other is the physical properties of the minerals of the crust of the Earth. So those really keep it going, but it is the ecology that sits in between the sunlight and the minerals that is circular. So in a sense, we have been extracting value from the circular process in the way we produce food. And the problem is we do not give back. And it's as simple as that. And this giving back is actually much easier than we thought, and much more productive than we would think. So, I mean, there is an inherent productivity in nature. So we cannot get away from thinking about circular enterprises and circular agriculture without also incorporating the inherent productivity of nature and the productivity of biological processes. So that's important, because it means that the way to achieve a circularity in your enterprise is through the enterprise design and the creation of systems that interlock with each other. So the interesting thing here is the word, I discovered a new word, and the word is the holon. So holons make a holistic system. So each holon is a holistic system in itself. So it's a little bit self-referential. But if you look at agriculture, the productivity in the soil and the plant is already circular. The plant grows and dies, feeds the soil, and the soil then gives the nutrients for the next generation of plants. So it's that circularity that has to be incorporated in the enterprise design and in the design of the operations of the enterprise. So, so circular agriculture is achievable in two ways. The one is inside the enterprise, and the way in which the processes inside is structured, and we can talk about that. But it is also possible to achieve a circularity amongst enterprises in a sector. And that would be where the ecological functions are distributed amongst enterprises, not necessarily in competition with each other, but rather in a kind of cooperative conflict, where there are partnership arrangements and linkages between them. So that is how we need to understand the systems design of an urban or any circular farm. So so the design of the farm is important, but it might be that the holism of the farm is not complete. So there are leakages. So that can be fixed by creation of additional enterprises that feed off these leakages and then bring resources back into the system so that can be used again. So this is a little bit different than organic. So I'm just going to talk about organic. I don't actually think it is going to be a complete solution to agriculture. and you would need circularity, but there are important things to note. So when you are an organic farmer, now the standardized organic approach is really a chemical input approach that determines the quality of the chemicals. But if you really think about organic and organic production and farming, what you would do is you would take all the organic resources of your farm and implement it in only one small part. So you would have an abundance of biomatter that rots and feeds your soil. So that is actually what's happening globally. We are taking resources from wherever, combining them and then implementing them in an organic way or in a non-organic way. So that's how organic agriculture can work. It can only use the resources in the ecosystem. You cannot create more than there is. But what you would do, you would implement them so that the place where you implement there was an abundance, more than there would normally be. And you would need that because you need to achieve a productivity as a business enterprise that beats the productivity of nature. Else, there's no way you can make money. So circularity is different. As with the organic, puts it all in one, the circularity would do more or less the same, but it would, instead of just harvesting resources from one place and implementing it there, it would probably harvest the resources locally and then aggregate, implement, and then the wastes would be reincorporated into the enterprise operations. So this creates the peculiar opportunities. And I don't think we will be able to achieve circularity in agriculture without a serious and widespread system. And also it has to be decentralized, a decentralized waste harvesting and processing system. So I'm talking about processing bio-waste into compost, which is really the basics of all soil. And you can tinker with that to make it more productive. So this is really what is involved in circular agriculture. So circular agriculture is a little bit different than what we would expect at the moment on the ground. South African agriculture is one of the key historical examples of industrial agriculture. So these guys, historically, after the Second World War, we realized how to make fertilizers out of nitrogen, and it engendered the global agricultural system. And in that system, it's the usual suspects: America, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, which are the only exporters. And I think it's still the case, although things have changed. But those colonial countries, they received the first impetus or intervention to create these industrial agricultural systems with colonialism and imperialism, and that is what we have. So no, it's not circular, although in the background everything is circular, but it's not necessarily circular because this agriculture really depends upon the implementation and sourcing of synthetic inputs. However, in our agricultural system, and it's very much a dualism, there's the very large scale industrial system, which probably produces 98% of all our food. And I might be a bit wrong there, but smaller farmers or those who are not commercial farms on lands with title deeds, they produce very little. And there's only 300,000 small farmers in South Africa who regularly supply the market. So there's a real issue there. It's not circular, but it's also not redistributive in that sense. But we would find circularity in an alternative agriculture, and there's a strong movement, the permaculture, organic, etc., food sovereignty movement, and they would be quite open to the idea of circularity, although circularity could also not be organic, which is also okay, I suppose. But an alternative approach is certainly there, and you would find I call them spas are organic, so because a lot of farmers in the homelands and rural areas, they don't have the inputs of conventional farming, so by default they become organic and circular, but the intensity of the circularity is not sufficient to lead to extremely high volumes of production, per square meter. So there's lots of work that could be done there. But we also are finding in the press farmers realizing the benefits of regenerative, and regenerative is actually important to note because circularities supply the material for regeneration. But we are seeing that the conventional farmers, they are tired of the debt that they have and the chemicals that poisons the soil. When you shift to regenerative and circular approaches, within 2 years, the benefits start coming to light. So we're seeing great innovation in rangeland management and cattle and the way we manage the grasslands in that. Because in South Africa, we are understocked but overgrazed. So what happens in South Africa is the cattle walk around and they eat all the sweet felt. So the sour felt dominates, and therefore we're losing carrying capacity in our lands. But these conventional farmers there's great innovation amongst them, and it's important to note that. But the key thing here is the competitiveness of a circular approach vis-a-vis the critical inefficiencies of industrial agriculture. Once you start using the chemicals, it's just a slippery slope. Next year you use more, and it carries on until you reach a point where you either have to become very, very large or get out. And that is what's going on here. So there's an equilibrium economics at play here in the way in which these inputs are traded that makes it very hard to make a profit as a large farmer. And the word of mouth is if you don't have 400 hectares, there's no point in farming maize because you don't have the economy of scale. So the competitiveness of industrial agriculture is in question, and it is a real risk. And circularity offers a solution for this risk that we are facing. So we need to really, really focus on that and see how this can change the way we produce food. So this would be, not just using mulch on the land, but also integrating cattle and their dung in crop production. Those kind of systems are there to integrate the wastes from livestock, especially a feedlot kind of livestock, to harvest the manure, transform that into inputs. Those are the kinds of things that have to be done. Allowing grasslands to regenerate and have selective grazing practices. Alan Savory's practices from Zimbabwe is really important here. So those kind of things are important. And I do know, like for instance, the grazing practices, they lead to an increase of 3% in the grassland productivity per year, which translates to a 1 to 2% increase in the productivity of your grazing animals. So those are the kinds of things that you need to look for. And over long periods of time, a decade or so, your productivities increase because the biomass is accumulating in the soil. So it's really, really important to note this because it could give a competitive advantage, especially to a smaller farmer. The guys with only 400 hectares, which are really marginal in the grain and livestock market. So we need to think about that. Also, the other thing that happens is when you transform to a circular enterprise, your capital costs decrease because you are now creating systems to harvest waste back into your enterprise. So your capital expenses are reduced, but then your processes and activities increase, and your labor is going to increase. And it's often a better deal to have more laborers because there's a lot of people who need work. And then it gives opportunities to create circular systems with the way you train and develop skills in your workers. So it's really a big enterprise development approach that we need to think about. But the lower entry cost due to waste harvesting should be noted because that would decisively affect the profitability of the enterprise. But if it comes to, so economic development would certainly benefit, and you would also have a strategic advantage because you would be importing less costly fossil fuel-based fertilizers. However, for food security, we must be clear. The only thing that really determines food security is the cost of food, and that can only be influenced by the performance of enterprises. So what is happening today, because it's a global system, if you buy an apple today, built into the price of the apple is the transport logistics cost of all apples in the global system. So, and that is done through the Marketing Act and the way they structure that. But what circularity can do is not only reduce the input costs, so you increase the profitability, but you also de-link to some extent from fossil fuel-based inputs. So therefore, your enterprise performance could be better, although it's still an open question whether this would deliver more food. But please note, there is more than enough food in the world. 60% of all the food that we produce is given to animals. So we can solve hunger in one day, but we can't because the system trades the food somewhere else. So what circularity can, however, do is it could decentralize production, and you could have greater access in that sense because of the emphasis on waste and the waste harvesting which allows sufficient productivity. So that would be the key. And what this then does is it would make food available at a lower than market rate. And I'm thinking of the global system and the example of the apple. And this is the thing. You can achieve that because your inputs would be lower than industrial fertilizer. And I mentioned fertilizer because that is between 40 and 60% of all conventional agriculture's inputs. So it could be mechanization would also be changed, etc. But this is the point. The only way we can guarantee increased food security is to deliver food at lower than market rates. And circularity gives us one opportunity to do that, and it is an important one. So what is sorry for now focusing on urban agriculture, but waste, there are people who make a living out of waste, harvesting our waste. The reclaimers is a large sector in South Africa. So if they can make a livelihood with reclaiming waste, then there is sufficient value in the waste to build an enterprise. So this could be complemented with decentralized technology to harvest, to compost things at mass scale. And you could then create high intensity biological production systems. And we advocate the implementation of deep trench or above ground deep trench beds. And that's very, very productive. And it costs zero, only labor, and therefore it's an opportunity. So the integration with society is important because what I've noticed amongst the farmers that I mentor is they are now exchanging food for food waste. And now, and that gives a 30% reduction in price. So there's your below market rate food price. So that can be done, but it took 10 years to figure that out. So that would then create other benefits from landscape to waste to jobs because of the creation and conserving of value in the circular enterprises. So guys, we won't be able to do this if we don't foreground biological processes in the circular value chain. So, really, it's about waste, transform them into inputs, create a production system that can handle that, and then also streamline your sales and logistics with that. And here I'm thinking about the cultural creation of the product. The product could just be meat, or it could be circular meat. So once the customer understands the process of production, they might be more inclined to buy this product. So this is important to note. However, I also just want to note there's a completely synthetic alternative already possible. And there are people who are making protein out of thin air and go check it out. So that would create a very different value chain, and it could also be created in a circular way. So we make these foods out of thin air, we eat them, we defecate, and the defecation goes back in the soil. There is a really, really important development, and that could add more matter into the biomatter. So I don't know, take a look at that. But the key here would be for feedback. And my example of the cultural production of the product, it depends upon a feedback loop from the farmer to the customer and back. And it is this circular a relationship which can also create, the basics of a new marketing channel, a new way of selling, a new way of harvesting inputs. And please note, as my farmers in Soweto are harvesting waste, even urine in exchange for food, Pick n Pay has started harvesting its own food waste and giving that to their own pork meat suppliers. So this is happening, and it can happen in many ways. So we need to think about that. But this can only be done by the enhancement of biological processes in these enterprises. So what you need to have is a cascading of value and material flows from the bottom to the top and back. So the sequence of these flows, the design of the enterprises is important, and to achieve those synergies. But these things cannot be implemented with a big bang. They are complex, and there are leakages that you kind of want. You want them to leak, but you want to catch the leak. So there's a case for an iterative, slow implementation. So I'm running out of time, but the regulatory barriers is there. We are marginalizing the waste reclaimers. We need to think about that and empower them. Technology is going to be key, but knowledge is a close second, because it's the knowledge of ecological dynamism that would enable a farmer to create these processes. And that is what is necessary. So the other danger is the dualism, to think it's either conventional or circular or organic or, or that. And that's not a good thing. That is just not true. Everything is a circle already. There's the greenwashing danger, which I should have started with. And also, to do this, you would have to budget for experimentation. So on my last slide, there's a link at the bottom. I hope you can see it. Excellent study that identifies the circular opportunities in the South African economy. Thank you, the Netherlands. But bio-waste, municipal waste, industrial waste, up to 58,000 employment opportunities. You would also have to be quite inventive. And the best example I could give you is the Sanovation. I think it's either Kenya or Uganda. Both those areas are hotbeds of innovation. And take a look at that example. It's really, really good. How to make charcoal out of human poo and sell it, and get the municipality to pay for all of that. Really, really key. But that would mean really clever regulation. Technology and expertise always, enterprise innovation. But the key here is, when you do these things, there's always a marginal actor in the background that's been oppressed or pushed out of the system. So therefore, if you implement this, the benefits of transformation are likely to be vast and impactful because of the incorporation of marginalized actors and marginalized species and marginalized processes into the normal production system. I think that is all I have time for, and I do hope there would be another opportunity for me to answer questions. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My apologies once again that I'm so incredibly busy. But there's not a lot of people out there that can do this kind of work. Anyway, please have a great day. Bye-bye.
Wonderful. Yeah, so that was a really comprehensive and I think phenomenal view of the whole system, really. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look properly in the chat, but I did see that there was some engagement. But I think we're getting to Q&A later. Is that correct, Kat? We're kind of skipping through. Great, wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Fabulous.
Just to note also, sorry, Sal, that we'll share, he did have a presentation, but it didn't make sense for us to do the video and the presentation, but we will share the slides that he was referring to. They have some good, solid information on them.
Thank you, Kira. So now moving swiftly on to our next incredible speaker, and that's Dr. Henry Roman. And he's the regional representative, Southern Africa and country representative for South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe at the International Water Management Institute. He brings an extensive background in water, solid waste, climate change, and circular economy. His focus is on circular economy and water pollution, as well as the mobilization of youth to propel the water industry forward amidst the challenges of the present and uncertainties of the future. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Roman. Yeah, you're welcome to take the screen and start your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally Ann, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation to share what I know about the topic. I've recently shifted from a government department in South Africa to IMI, and it's been quite an interesting time learning a lot more about agriculture. So I titled my talk Addressing Agriculture Resilience through a Transition to a Circular Economy, because that's top of mind for us in Southern Africa. Recently, we've just gone through El Nino. 3 countries declared a disaster: Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, all due to the drought. So agricultural resilience is really top of mind. Just quickly, who are we as IMI? You may not all know who IMI is. So it's the International Water Management Institute. We're celebrating 40 years this year. It's a research for development research institutions. We work with government, civil society, and private sector, and we focus on water problems in developing countries. And then we look at how to scale up solutions to assist them. The challenges we focus on are in Asia and in Africa. And then we assist governments, like I said, with decision making, and we look at how to promote uptake and change through capacity development. We are in 15 countries and a global network of scientists that operate in more than 55 countries. This briefly shows you all the offices of IMI across the world. This is the region that I'm responsible for. So a little piece of IMI that I'm responsible for down south in Africa. So I've titled this one Opportunities, because we can talk about the problems. There are lots of those. But let's see in South Africa how things look. Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of the one thing. There we go. So in 2023, I took this off one of the entities that report to Department of Agriculture. The sector contributed about 1.8% to South Africa's GDP. That's around 83.7 billion rand. If you look at the crops, the major crops involved at that time, it's maize, wheat, sugarcane, sunflower seeds, and soybeans. I'll put the values down next to them. But then if you look at the crops that are our major export crops, you've got citrus fruits, grapes, and maize. So you'll note maize is one of our biggest crops that we grow in the region, not just in South Africa, but in Southern Africa, in Africa. Maize is a staple food. We have a program that we're busy working on, looking at diversification from maize across East and Southern Africa. Because the reliance on maize, and you hit with a drought, it's not that drought resistant, so you end up in a problem. In terms of the Sustainable Development Targets, if you look at 12.3, we want to halve per capita global food waste at retail and consumer levels, and then reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest. If you look at target 6.3, we want to improve water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping, minimizing chemicals and materials, fertilizers, agricultural inputs to eutrophication are really becoming problematic, and oftentimes we only look at point sources because they're easy to identify. So we point fingers at wastewater treatment works. Yes, they contribute, but they're not alone in the contribution. We need to be understanding of that. Also looking at how we can recycle water safely for reuse. This is a case study undertaken by the CSR, completed in 2021 under the Waste Roadmap. And if you look at this, it's looking at food loss and waste in South Africa. It's greater than the 1/3 that Sally spoke about it. In South Africa, we determined it to be about 45%. And if you break it up, you've got post-harvest handling and storage, which accounts for 9%. And then you've got households and consumers, you and I, accounting for 13%. Just quickly to touch on that post-harvest handling and storage, we underestimate the value of good road infrastructure. When you're transporting fruit and vegetables on bad roads, they get bruised. And then they're not as in demand as if we had taken everything on the N3 highway and drove it on nice paved roads. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But the biggest loss comes in processing and manufacture. And that could be where an opportunity, the opportunity is all along this value chain, but that could be an area that we can really hone in on, looking at improving efficiencies of the processing itself, but also no process that you do is going to be 100% efficient. So what do you then do with those the residues that then emerge from the process itself? Now moving into the next part of my talk, I'm looking at, I've just termed it this last night, a circular agri-water sector, because of the relationship between agriculture and water. Just quickly, the Circularity Gap Report of 2024 showed us that, circular economy, although it's entered the mainstream, it's still in decline, which is an interesting observation to make. So the share of secondary materials that enter the economy declined from 9.1% in 2018 to 7.2% in 2023. But what's more scary than that is in the last 6 years since the report came out, as a globe, we've consumed more than 500 billion tons of materials. That's nearly as much as the entirety of the century before us. That is a scary number. And now if we're looking at a just transition, we have to take a systems thinking approach in real life applications of the circular economy. Because the systems change must meet people's needs, and because people and their skills are required to implement the solutions themselves. And we have to look at the solutions in our context in Africa. They must be designed with the most vulnerable people in mind. And as Prof. Milan indicated, if you do it right, job quality can be improved. You reduce inequality across the workforces and across the population. And I just wanted to mention that this is a complex systems change. We have to be pragmatic about what we can do, what we can't do, and how much we can push. And it will take time, because you're changing a system. You're not changing one small part of it. You're changing an entire part of it. The studies conducted by the CSR looked at climate change. I've just picked out the ones that I thought are most applicable, the climate change, water, and agriculture ones. It's been shown already that by adopting a circular approach to climate mitigation can put the globe back on track to meet its targets. And we all countries have these very ambitious, nationally determined contributions or NDCs that we have to update every 5 years and make more ambitious, but we never look at whether or not we can actually do that, do what we say we want to do. But also we need to start doing like some countries and incorporate the circular economy into the NDCs so that there's an impetus to actually start doing something. And then according to the study by the CSR, there's a potential conservatively to achieve a 34% reduction in emissions, mainly achieved through these two principles. One, to design out waste and pollution, and two, regeneration of our natural systems, which comes as a result of using less materials or requiring less virgin materials. Looking at water, a lot of the jobs in South Africa, a lot of our GDP is dependent on water. Water is a cross-cutter. It cuts across everything we do. Agriculture, which is the largest user of water in South Africa, uses 61% of the water resources. It's lower than the global average, which sits at around 70%, but it's still a very high number. You know, it also is, so if you look at the circular economy interventions, in South Africa, in the water sector, these are not new. Many have been partly implemented to date. We have systems in the country where water reuse and recycle is in play. We have in the country examples of resource recovery from wastewater treatment works, utilization of sludge for various applications, including production of gas to take turbines offline, for example. And when you look at that from an energy perspective, if you take a wastewater treatment turbine offline, you're saving almost 60% of your power consumption from the grid. So initially for South Africa, we need to look at our high water demand. For a country that's classed as the 30th driest on the planet, we have one of the highest per capita utilization of water on the planet. So, and then also looking at pollution-intensive economic sectors such as agriculture and manufacturing, and then non-revenue water, which is a growing number in South Africa, especially in our big cities and our towns, so as high as 60% in some instances. And that means it's water that's physically lost in the system and water that people are not paying for. So there's no recovery of cost. Agriculture, I've given you some numbers there, but it's a resource-intensive sector. Heavy reliance on water, energy, soil, nutrients, natural cycles as primary inputs. But there are major impacts on the environment. It's a leading contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, as Janita indicated before, a leading consumer of water, and also a leading producer of nitrate and ammonia pollution. However, there's a shopping list of interventions. I'm not going to go through all of them on how you can address the agricultural sector. There's things from the digital platforms, which is increasingly becoming important, but that requires a lot of data. It can reduce your costs, increase your revenue, and create more innovative products. There's biogas production of the residues. You've got crop rotation, composting, mixed farming. The list is long and has been mentioned in the chat already, so I'm not going to go through it. But from an ME perspective, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what we've been looking at. What we've been looking at in addressing circular agri-water systems, let's call it that. So the first one is it has to be simple. You don't always want to get very, very high tech in your solution. So looking at SDG 2, where you want to end hunger and improve and achieve food security, there you have to look at things like dietary trends. We've spoken a little bit about that. Prof. Malan touched on it. Population growth and climate change. Population growth, we're going to hit 10 billion people soon. Climate change, we know we're on a trajectory that's not looking great for the planet right now. But also, we know that the gap between food supply and demand is projected to remain large, right? Especially in sub-Saharan Africa. And Prof. Malan gave an example of how you can potentially change that. But to make the change, to attain this SDG, you need system-wide improvements. And everything we want to do in the circular space, be it SDG 12, SDG 6, now SDG 2, requires a system-wide change. So that means it will take time. 2030 is too close. A lot of the SDGs are probably not going to be met, much like the MDGs. So we have to improve things like water management and building climate resilience. So here we look at irrigation, and we've shown with examples in Zambia and Zimbabwe how irrigation can mitigate the impact of a drought. But looking at very simple to use tools, and the one I'm mentioning here is called the chameleon sensor. A very simple sensor inserted into the soil assists farmers to understand when they need to water. Because the problem you have is farmers water based on how they think it should be done. So that they can end up in instances where they overwater, which is also not great for the plants. But if you have a system like this, which is very simple and easy to use, you water when it's required as well. And then there's also ways you can look at different crop types that utilize. So if you're in a rain-fed system and you're going out of season, you can start planting crops that you utilize less water, for example. What our key findings around this is it increased crop income by reducing fuel, labor, and fertilizer costs as well. We had an increase in crop yield, greater water productivity, reduced water use, reduced water nutrient loss, etc., because you're not leaching through the soil by overwatering. So you're not leaching the nutrients out. They're actually being held. Then if you look at things like recovering and reusing resources. So if you have a latrine or a septic tank, fecal sludge, you can dry that sludge, you can co-compost that sludge. You can then you can pelletize it, as has been done in Ghana. It's a going concern, it's a business there. And then you can use the pellets as a fertilizer. So this, we've got evidence of business models that can be utilized. But the point here is we need to think differently of how we utilize different sources for nutrients in order to address the growing food demand that we have. And that's where the urban farming can also fit in. A lot of our metros have big informal settlements that the only sanitation they have are either VIP pit or VIP pit latrines. But what do you do with the sludge? Sludge cannot be disposed of on a landfill. It's against the law. And right as we speak, the Department of Water and Sanitation is developing a guideline document for the circular economy of fecal sludge management. I probably butchered the title, but it's along those lines, and I sit on that steering committee. But there's also, I wanted to just point you to the Asian Development Bank Water Circular Economy webinar series that IMI was part of. It's looking at how do we use science and innovation for a water secure future. But what are the driving forces? And the social and health impact of it is very important. I won't go through the slides will be shared. But there's the economic impact. We need to rethink business models. We need to look at what is the competition for resources. So resource diversification, nutrient recovery, water security in urban and peri-urban spaces, reduce climate change impact. You know, how do you design out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use? So optimize your resource yields within the water system, optimize your energy and resource extraction from water systems, regenerate the natural systems. This is critical because as we're impacting the natural system, the cost of treatment of raw water for potable use is increasing because the water is more polluted and it's costing a lot more to get it to a standard we can utilize. So the impact on the environment that we are having is multifaceted. So how do we preserve and enhance our natural capital? And minimum disruption to those natural systems. So just to conclude, because I know I'm running out of time. If you look at so 27.4% of produce is wasted during the agro-processing or manufacturing part of process, right? My thinking is in South Africa, we have an opportunity here for biorefinery processes to be utilized. These will yield high-value products. For example, work done by Prof. Bruce Sitole at CSR showed a simple example. Chicken feathers are discarded because they have blood on them, so they have to be discarded at a toxic waste site or a hazardous waste site. That's a very high cost. What he has shown is that you can extract the keratin, a protein that makes the shaft of the feather. You can extract that. That's got a high value. And the keratin is utilized. And here's the circular part. An innovator on another program called the Invalisi Enviropreneurship Program. She has a cosmetics industry based off natural products. She became aware of the keratin being produced from feathers. She's incorporating the keratin into her beauty products, into the skin creams, etc. So there's a nice circular example of how things can be done. Additionally, through a biorefinery process, if you take cellulose, which is a large component of your residues from agricultural waste, and you break it down to glucose, the glucose molecule itself can be opened out and built up into various things. You can build out bioplastics, you can build out antibiotics, and other high-value chemicals off the back of waste, as we're calling it now. Again, with proper tools, our farmers, and here IMI works only with smallholders. We don't work with commercial farms. They can conserve water. They can reduce their water demand to a much lower number. I don't know what that may be at this time. But at the same time, increasing yield, which is where the world needs to go with increasing demand for food, less water, we have to figure out ways of increasing our yields. I also believe that decentralized wastewater treatment systems, especially in the rural parts of the country, not only will they provide dignity to people, but they can also contribute to increased water conservation through the proper utilization of grey water. It can also reduce the use of fertilizer due to co-composting of the sludge, that example I showed before. And again, you can improve yields in these areas of small holders. However, again, it's a systems approach. So you have to combine different approaches or interventions in a systems manner to increase crop yields whilst reducing water demand within a changing climate is how we can transition ourselves to a more circular approach to managing agriculture and water. This is the last slide. I'm just pointing you to some interventions from IMI, one on resource recovery and reuse. We have a series of publications on that that goes back quite a number of years. And then just to show that we don't do this work alone, we're working with the UN, with FAO on looking at water quality in agriculture, the risks and how to mitigate those risks as well. So we do work with UN agencies across the continent regarding these principles I've outlined. With that, I'd like to thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to the organizers. Thank you. Sally, you're muted.
Sally, you're muted.
Gosh, rookie era, guys. How long have we been doing this? Yeah, my head feels like it's actually going to explode. There's way too much coming through. Thank you so much. I think it's amazing just to see what's been done in our region and across the world. So thank you for that. And we look forward to some questions and through the interactive session. So without any further ado, let me just quickly get Maya's picture up here so I can introduce her properly. Maya Zarkin is the co-founder and CEO of Pillar Feed, a startup transforming organic waste into sustainable resources using black soldier flies. With a background in economics, Maya leads efforts to reduce food waste and promote circular agriculture in South Africa. Her innovative approach has garnered awards and funding, driving Pillar Feed's mission to scale globally and contribute to sustainable farming and climate resilience. I'm really excited to hear more about this. So Maya, over to you, and yeah, look forward to your presentation.
Thank you for the intro, Sally. Let me We good? You see? Awesome, okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
good,
everyone. I am Maya Zakin, and I am really grateful to be here with you all today. Thank you to ACEN for organizing such an awesome event. It's really been really insightful. Today, I'm excited to share with you our vision at Pillar Feed of creating a circular food system and discuss how we can turn food waste into two valuable resources using nature's own methods. Okay. So as we transition from a linear to a circular economy, landfills in the Cape are expected to be organic waste-free by 2027. Currently, 40% of landfills waste is food waste, and I did see in the previous presentation that's actually 45%. And waste is happening at every level of the food chain, as Henry laid out for us so beautifully. Not only is this a loss in nutrients while countless starve, when food waste isn't processed properly, it releases a potent methane gas emission, which is reported to be up to 78% more potent than carbon dioxide. Not only this, but when the resources that are used to grow the food, such as water, time, labor, also gets wasted when we throw that food away. So this is quite a frightening problem, but if we do turn to nature to solve our problem, she offers us a solution. So in tropical areas around the world, the black soldier fly can be found searching for food waste to lay its eggs next to. The minute these eggs hatch, they ferociously start eating the food waste and can grow into fully sized larvae in just 7 to 14 days. So on this slide, you can see from the magnifying glass up until they start turning black. So that is their larval stage, where they eat up to double their weight of food waste every day. And during that stage, also excrete a manure, otherwise known as frass. After this period, the larva will begin to go dormant and turn black as they start to use up all the energy that they've stored from the food to transform into flies. In their fly form, they do not eat at all, so they actually are not considered pests, unlike your common house fly, and only drink water and mate, completing their life cycle by laying their eggs next to a food waste source. So by creating systems that mimic the life cycle of a fly, we are able to grow larvae fed on food waste. The process would start by collecting food waste from restaurants and other waste sources, feeding the waste to fly eggs, and providing them with the perfect environment for them to eat the waste and grow into fully sized larvae. This process keeps nutrients circulating in the ecosystem and requires minimal resources to do so. Okay, so let's delve into the two different outputs. Okay, so larva and the larva market is gaining traction as a sustainable way of processing food waste, but also as a sustainable alternative to current protein alternatives. Black soldier fly larvae have a impressive bioconversion rate of up to 25%, making them a superior alternative to traditional waste processing methods. So you can imagine 100 kgs of waste can turn into 25 kgs of protein. Nutritionally, black soldier fly larvae are nutrient dense with a high protein content and fat. They have most of the essential amino acids and minerals such as calcium that make them an ideal ingredient for livestock and aquaculture and pet feed. This nutritional profile positions black soldier fly larvae as a viable substitute for fish meal and soya, which are the current market alternatives for protein. And both of these products or inputs are really resource intensive to produce and has resulted in a lot of biodiversity loss within our oceans and on land. So black soldier flies really offer a great alternative, not just because they process food waste, but they also require minimal resources to do so. So they can be grown vertically, requiring less land. And as larvae, they don't require water or additional water. They would, use the water from the food waste itself. Professor Nordea mentioned that 60% of grown food goes to feeding animals. I've seen stats saying up to 83% of all grown crops goes to feeding animals. So there really is a huge case for diverting these valuable inputs to humans and considering insect protein as an alternative in that case. Moving to frass. So frass is the byproduct of black soldier fly larvae or their manure. It can be used as a soil amendment that improves plant health, soil health, and crop yields. South Africa imports 60 to 70% of fertilizers. And with recent global geopolitical events, such as the Russian-Ukraine war, has driven the prices of fertilizer up, squeezing farmers' margins, reducing their fertilizer use, which arguably is a great thing. But it's also leading them to lower yields and higher food prices. So frass really does come in as quite an exciting product. There's still a lot of research being done about the impacts of this soil amendment. One of my favorite impacts or characteristics that we've seen is that so when they shed their skin to transform into a fly, they have an exoskeleton made out of chitosan. That shell signals to the plant that there is predators around, boosting the plant's defense mechanisms to other pests and making them grow stronger. So I think, yeah, there's really exciting things there. And of course, increasing the microavailability and biodiversity of the soil. So pillar feed. So Pillar Feed is my startup that I co-founded with Jason Fine. And we are really committed to seeing the potential of the black soldier fly industry with a focus on creating a small scale, low carbon, low tech model that is decentralized and easily replicable. Our decentralized approach allows us to provide on-site solutions that minimize transport costs, processing costs, and also processing costs because we're advocating to feed larvae live. So there's that, and then also packaging costs, which in a circular conversation has its own benefits there. Unlike more high-tech solutions, our model is designed to be accessible to low-skilled labor, addressing South Africa's unemployment crisis as well. Initially, we were looking at how we can have our own farms so that we could sell the larvae ourselves, but we quickly recognized the need for a more inclusive approach, one that looks at how we can harness the potential of this industry to benefit small and medium-scale farmers. Up to 70% of a farmer's cost is feed, and Professor Nordea also mentioned 40% can be for fertilizer. So at first, with us trying to produce it and sell the feed, we were having to sell it at a price that is commodity prices so that we would be able to make profits as well. But with our containerized systems, which I'll also show you next, or on-site farms, we're looking at how we can allow farmers to set up their own farms, increasing productivity on farms, but also allowing them to take control of their own supply chains, while also diversifying revenue streams. So this is our containerized solution. We've actually got two. This is the larger unit that we have championed, and then our own smaller unit that we are piloting here in Cape Town. So if you take your eyes from left to right of the container, you'll notice there's three segments. So those are three interleading containers. The unit on the left is a waste receiving container with equipment for processing the waste and space for storing waste. And that's really to get the particle size down and get the consistency for allowing for the larva to eat it most efficiently. Once it's processed, we'll take it to the central unit, which has is a temperature controlled unit. Black soldier flies are tropical, so you want to keep a warm temperature. And then that blue segment there are stackable trays. So I mentioned earlier, it's a vertical system. So the food waste will go into the trays with larva eggs or neonates. And after about 7 to 14 days, you will be left with just fully sized larvae and frass. At that point, you'll take it to the last unit where they will be separated and harvested. We've also excitingly got our own app, which will allow us to track the flow of waste, collecting data while also virtually managing different units wherever they may be. This app will be a game changer for us to oversee different units while communicating with operators and donors with ease. So our team consists primarily of Jason and I. Jason heads up our operations and is currently setting up our container here in Cape Town. And we have partnered with, we outsourced Gen Biocell, who are lead industry experts and have had over a decade of experience in the black soldier fly industry, including setting up more larger scale units. They actually have the first South African chamber unit at their facility now. So the farm that we're setting up next door is being set up alongside a small egg production farm to be able to validate our assumptions, which will be supported by our app. Nature is inherently circular, constantly recycling and regenerating resources. Agriculture as a part of nature must embrace the circular principles. Nature doesn't know what waste means. So if we ask her for a solution, she gives us one, a hero. And while not all heroes wear capes, ours has wings. We wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for all these amazing companies and organizations that have believed in us and supported us. So I just want to take a moment to thank them. Very grateful for all of the technical and financial support they've given us, and we are ready to take this forward. And if anyone would like to contact me to find out more about black soldier flies or circular food systems, please do. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks, Maya. You didn't disappoint in terms of, I was really looking forward to that presentation, and so thank you for that. So I hope everyone else did as well. Really cool. Yeah, I mean, we've seen the initiatives before with black soldier flies, but it just really does make sense, right? And it's starting to think in a broader system of how can we reconnect the dots. As you can see from the presentations, that everything is interconnected. And that's what we really need to really start thinking about. And I know we think about sectors, but sectors, they're all connected. And that's the beauty of this dialogue series, is that as we're going through these online webinars, yes, we're talking about agriculture today, and yes, we're talking about mining next, but it's all connected. And at the end, you'll see that the connections will become a lot more visible. So thank you very much, Maya, for that. Let me get my screen back up, but I actually think we're going to be heading into our interactive session now. And that's going to, I'm going to bring Katarina back in just to help us through that.
Let me just open the board. It should also pop up in front of every one of you, and then we can actually go to the actual board. So I think we should see lots of people on the board. So you can actually, just for those that haven't actually worked with the whiteboard before on Zoom, you can actually zoom in yourself. So you can work completely independent on the whiteboard. And I'm going to give over to Sally. I think what we have tried to do is really break it down into a few questions with sticky notes so that you can all actually type out and also engage with us during this conversation.
Maybe just a couple of technicalities, because I haven't, to be honest, used a whiteboard before, so that's full disclosure. But it works similarly to the others. So right click to drag, so right to drag to where you need to be, and zooming in is, oh, mine disappeared.
Let me start this again. Maybe Zoom doesn't know it either. There it should come again.
It's all about innovation, guys, and trying things differently, and not being scared to try a new approach. So here we go. So there are a couple of questions on here. Please let me know. Please let us know. Can you access the whiteboard? And if anyone, so we've got a couple of questions here, but we're also open to take some questions as well. So if there's a question on here that you can't see, but you really want answered, perhaps put it on so that we can also, and if it needs to be directed to one of our speakers, we can do that as well. All right, so the very first one is, what opportunities have you identified for the implementation of circular principles in the agricultural value chain? We've had a number of people make with comments in the chat function, which has been amazing. So it would be really great if you could add some of your thoughts to this whiteboard. And you don't have to stick on the first question, right? So this is there for you to move through it as you wish. I just want to quickly do a time check. And we're going to be here for a few minutes. So yeah. The second question is around, what barriers do you experience? And this is probably the one we can answer, and we can probably get stuck there, right? Because we know what the barriers are. The next one is around, what feedback and input can you give on the regulatory space to drive circularity in the agricultural sector? Lovely to see comments flowing in through that already. And what is your commitment to bring forward circular economy at organizational level? I also want to add opportunities, just as, you know, if you see opportunities, I think, can we capture those as well? Let's really get, this is great. Okay, so we've got wastewater sludge beneficiation. Soil quality enhancement on commercial farms. Did you guys, well, I'm sure you did, because there are many of you will probably know this, obviously, but if we build better soils, it holds water, and it will, you know, it just is such a, so good soils help with water retention and help with the water cycle. And I think that's one thing that we don't necessarily think about very often as well. So linking food waste, soil, and water together in one system.
Yeah, I think that becomes super important now. I don't know if everyone else is experiencing this, but I'm down visiting in Cape Town, and you can feel how high the water table is. All the ground's just sludgy underneath. It just means that our water, you know, we know that come summer we'll be facing a drought like we always do, and it kind of is important to remember that everything's connected.
100%. And like in urban environments as well, like when we think about our building and the hardened surfaces, How do we bring nature back into those cities and those urban environments, and maybe reduce those hardened surfaces and actually let water percolate and penetrate, to help with these events. Cape Town did receive something like a year's annual rainfall in 1 month, though, I think, didn't it? So it's
Yeah,
kind of
no,
nice.
it's definitely not normal, but still astonishing.
Yeah.
Just what gets lost. I mean, I'm in Joburg normally, and it's just astonishing how much we lose as a city just because, you know, either things are paved over where they shouldn't be paved over, or the ground's just too hard for water to get in. Yeah.
Cool. So should we see what's coming through here? So soil quality enhancement of commercial farms, circular reintegration of organic food waste into food production practices. Wonderful. I'm wondering, so remember the agricultural value chain also includes the manufacturing side, and we saw that the manufacturing side has huge losses. And yeah, so it would be wonderful to kind of see a little bit around that. Does anybody here work on the manufacturing side? Our participants? Don't be shy. There we go. NOSH repurposes food waste as fermented foods. Lovely. Increased practice of regenerative agricultural methods, including organic inputs and soil amendments, diverse cropping. Clearing of illegal dumping areas and reusing the land for agricultural projects and waste management opportunities.
Sally, I also see that Nubanta wants to say something.
Oh, yes, please do. Nubanta, go for it. Yes.
Thank you very much for a very insightful presentation. Earlier this year, I was quite fortunate to attend World Circular Economy Forum in Belgium. And in one of the sessions that I was in, the concept of nutraceuticals, it was new to me, but the concept of nutraceuticals came through quite strongly in the discussions. And I think this is also part of the second principle of the circular economy in terms of keeping products and materials in use for longer, that it shouldn't just, whilst we can appreciate end of life or innovation that caters to the end of life management of food waste, but we should actually look at, there was a case study that was shared just on a wine farm to say that, you know, as much as once the wine is produced, different products can be made even from the skin of the grapes, from other waste products that are emanating. So before we even get to actually having a waste product, there's so many other opportunities just around the production outputs that come with some of the agricultural activities. And nutraceuticals was definitely a space that we needed to look at. And I think in South Africa, there is definitely a sectoral plan. I don't know if it has been developed, if anyone else is aware of it, or it is currently in development, that looks at how we can start to create a more inclusive nutraceutical sector where we can actually access resources and keep them in use for longer, and then also have that consistent feedstock supply of output that can be used as for composting and for that can go towards the end of life management of food waste. Thank you.
Thanks, Nubanta. And I think that kind of speaks a little bit to what Henry was talking about earlier. Henry, do you want to kind of, with the feathers example that you raised, are you able to share others or anything that you've seen in that regard? Sorry to kind of put you on the spot.
That's okay. I think I switched it off again. Okay. Yeah, so I was privileged enough in my time in government to be party to a few interesting programs. One was the Invalizi Enviropreneurship, and there they had a young guy from Midrand. What he did was he saw an opportunity for shiitake mushrooms, which are very expensive, and you import them, so they cost even more. What he did was he partnered with a coffee shop, and he took the coffee granules and he grew the mushrooms on the coffee granules, and then he sold the mushrooms to the coffee shop.
Great. Brilliant.
So another example of how you, and that's like local production supplier type of thing, you know. You don't have to go miles to find your supplier when it can be done in your neighborhood, kind of thing.
Exactly.
It sounds so simple, but I can only imagine how long it took him to convince the coffee shop to part with their waste and then to buy the mushrooms from him as well. So that's
brilliant.
another one.
Yeah, that's excellent.
One of the things I picked up, so when Linda Godfrey and I went to Europe, and we saw all these nice circular examples, you know, they're very proud of their circular examples. But we come back home and there's countless examples. There really are. We just don't document them. We don't record them. Yeah. And that's a problem in South Africa.
I can maybe bump in there. We have actually started documenting them through Circular South Africa. So we have mapped around about 200 case studies so far. And like I know, for example, Maya's organization isn't on there. There are countless organizations which we haven't captured. It was literally the first, like, going through all the databases that we are aware of. So we're really trying to capture all those case studies so that we can point people towards that and say, listen, it's already out there. It has been done. Please look it up, and please also implement it yourself and get in touch with those companies and organizations that do such wonderful work. So we are starting to work on it, but there's definitely more work to be done.
And interesting, from an African perspective, we often actually have to be innovative and essentially, so for example, when the drought hit in the Western Cape a few years ago, I mean, we had to whip out every single piece of innovation we could come up with, and so many companies were started based on, you know, just proper water reuse and actually using water more appropriately. Unfortunately, our memories are a little bit bad and we forget about these beautiful interventions sometimes, but now, especially when we've got so much water, but it's Africa in a way, and this is one of the reasons why the African Circular Economy Network was initiated, was to make sure that Europe actually saw that in certain cases, Africa's already got some circularity. In fact, in many cases, we have circularity. But yes, you're absolutely right. We do need to showcase that. And that's exactly what seems to be happening now. I'd love us to actually get some more people to the floor. Egmont, I hope I'm not going to put you on the spot, but you, in your comment in the chat, you talk about you work with manufacturers and water is a big issue, but every decision is dominated by cost. And I think that is often the case. And why is our water so cheap still? It's nuts. I can't understand it. So I don't know, Egmont, would you be willing to unmute yourself and have a chat? Or Henry, would you like to come in?
I think can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I think so what happened, I worked with 2 or 3 manufacturers last year developing strategies, and it mainly came out when family businesses needed funding or the owner wanted to exit, and suddenly they realized they didn't have a sustainability strategy, or, you know, there was some huge gaps in their process. And there's 2 things. The first thing is the cost of compliance, or the cost of non-compliance, is dirt cheap. We have beautiful regulations, but you know, in both cases, these manufacturers were out of spec on the water that they discharged, wildly out of spec. They were not listed. They were private companies. The cost of non-compliance to them was relatively low. And the only reason why they considered doing work and the projects either designed for them was because they wouldn't get funding to exit their businesses without proper compliance. So the cost of non-compliance is just very cheap. I personally think our cost of water is not out of kilter internationally. If I look at some of the international work that I do, but definitely the cost of non-compliance is a big issue. It's just cheap. And I'm talking both from a reputational or criminal or financial cost of non-compliance. The same issue sits with waste. The cost of waste in this country is way too cheap. But on the other side, what I wrote there, the affordable of waste management in the municipal environment, it's very difficult. And we see that with organic waste in Cape Town. It's slowly gathering momentum, but there's just way too much organic waste that's still being landfilled. And that's because it's cheap to do so.
Thank you. Some sobering comments there. So anybody brave to add on to that? This is amazing. We've got so many comments on the whiteboard on every single question. And Gugulethu Matlangu, are you able to unmute yourself? Because I see you've just written us a wonderful story here about you're an aquaponics farmer.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I just really so grateful to be a part of this, and I'm just learning so much from everyone. And I am here because I'm part of Future Females, which Maya is also a part of at Nobanti. So just supporting them as well. But I just would like to speak more on the circular economy as it exists today. So I was just giving examples as to the community projects that I'm involved in. I think, especially in the rural townships, the circular economy is something that maybe isn't phrased as circular economy, but it is currently being practiced. With just an example that I gave in the comments with what we're busy with now, promoting people to be busy with gardens and plant their indigenous seeds. They get their manure at a kraal nearby because there's kraals everywhere. And most of them also, have stoves and they collect wood ash. They are aware of the benefits of that. Some are privileged enough to partner up with other NGOs, and they've been sponsored with bioreactors for gases. So I think it is something that's currently being practiced in South Africa. I just think that we need to just tell more of these stories so communities and people, especially in the South African landscape, can understand that our practices that we've been practicing is circular. We just need to start promoting more of that and turn them into success stories. So I was just sharing that. But yeah, thank you, everyone.
Awesome. What a cool story. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone else who'd be willing to share their story? I see Francois's got a... Sorry, go for it.
Hi there, my name's Rebecca Henderson and I'm the head of program delivery at WasteAid. We're an international NGO that work within the waste sector to promote livelihood opportunities and environmental regeneration through waste management in various different kinds. And one of the most amazing things that we've seen through our work in the Gambia is the use of waste organic agricultural materials in subsistence farmers so that they can make alternative income streams, especially in the time where, during the rainy season, where they can't really operate as much. And using things like coconut husks to create biochar that can then allow them to cook their food at a cheaper cost, and also to sell those briquettes then for income generating opportunities so that they can diversify their income stream. Other things such as composting teas are a really great way that you're producing compost, but you can also harvest the tea from that compost. And in areas I think obviously the Gambia gets a lot more rain than South Africa, but there's great potential to use that kind of input in your drier climates so that you're not only harvesting the compost itself, but you're generating teas that then add to the moisture content in your soil. And that can help to protect during times when there is less rain and there is issues with water scarcity. So there's just a whole bunch of different kinds of innovations that in the informal sector are already using. And I really liked what Guguletu said there in terms of the circular economy actually being quite alive and well in the informal and rural spaces. It's just harnessing the small things that people are doing and really promoting them through, capacitizing different entrepreneurs in terms of business skills, in terms of opportunities for seed funding, and connecting them to government as well as private sector so that they can get more support and grow their businesses. And that's one thing that I find really inspirational about the circular economy. And I think that you guys are doing great work in terms of showing people the various different sort of innovations that can be done to promote it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's such a cool story. And I love the Gambia because it's such a beautifully sandwiched little country with this river flowing directly down the middle with this tiny little coastline. But it's got a lot of punch for such a small country. So thank you for sharing that. And I think we would love to chat to you a little bit more to find out some more. So Katerina, just from linking up some of our, maybe some ASIN colleagues to Rebecca, if you haven't already. What I was saying is what I think I love about that story is the decentralization and that word for decentralization. Often we hear about when we talk about economic models is that we need scale and we need economies of scale. And it's just like, yeah and nah. So sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, right? And that's the beauty of circularity is that sometimes it's actually about the community and sometimes it's about localization and sometimes it's about decentralization. And that's why there's no cookie cutter approach. It's context. It's quite specific in terms of what that community needs, what that area or region needs. So I think I love that about Rebecca's story right now is just its context is really important, but we can learn lessons as well. And how do we replicate, learn, share, and that is the beauty of circularity. There we go, Kamatarai. Hashtag decentralized urban energy. Yes, please. And we have an energy webinar coming up. So yes, I think we're definitely going to be looking at that. All right, I'm gonna run away.
Sally,
so Katerina, we need to wrap up.
Yes, I think so, but there is one more hand.
Yes.
One.
I'll keep it really brief. So I'm hearing a lot, and I've come from a regenerative agriculture and permaculture design background, so I've been privileged to be part of many circular initiatives. But my question here is really that, when I'm in innovation and entrepreneurship spaces, there's very few that cater to what we need, and we have very unique stories. So I'm guessing whether it's Circular South Africa or ASIN, maybe a good wrap-up question is also how do we remain involved, and what are the engagement opportunities with those organizations to develop these case studies and create really a community of practice around this.
That makes me super exciting. Thanks for asking that question.
We have to contain ourselves. I'm just gonna just hand over straight to you, Katerina, here to kind of wrap us up. Otherwise,
Siobhan and everyone, obviously you can join ASIN as a member, but also Circular South Africa, just join the website as a member. It's all for free. We have a newsletter, but we're also actually going to incorporate a whole case study form into our website to actually populate the knowledge hub that's already there even more. And the case studies haven't been published yet. So currently we're looking at how we can visualize them actually a bit more, but then also the Excel spreadsheet will be made available, and we're wanting to really continuously update that. And then I think another good remark is that you made is around tailoring solutions to entrepreneurs and the resources that are out there. So I think what we have seen is like Future Females have done fantastic. There's Womb Hub. They are very much focused on females in general and circular economy. They have been supported by the Finnish embassy. but then also actually Fitola, which we have worked closely together. They have just launched a platform called Hululu, actually around financing entrepreneurs as well. So we do see that there's movement in the space, but we also see that there aren't as many solutions yet, but we do hope that we can tilt the needle a little bit more so that actually entrepreneurs are supported, because they will make the change at the end of the day as well. So thanks so much for asking the question.
Thank you so much. That was a gorgeous answer.
Awesome. So I think we're going to need to wrap up. And so somebody's busy writing. This is interesting. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. Sorry, very easily distracted right now because I'm so excited. But I'm going to reshare my screen so that we could just go to the final part of our workshop, which is essentially our closing remarks, because we've had a bit of a summary now just with that open discussion, which was amazing. So thank you so much for everyone who participated and everyone who's on the call. But I'd like to bring Marianne Engelbrechts to do our closing remarks. Thank you. Marianne?
Yeah, thanks, Sally-Ann. And I have to say, fantastic. I think that was a great start to our series. And it's always difficult to close a webinar with such insightful inputs. It felt like 2 very short hours, I have to say. But maybe I can close by giving our project perspective, because we, as the Green Economy Transformation Project at GIZ, are really happy to be able to host the Circular Economy Dialogue Series. I think we can all agree, we have seen today that it allows us to have important discussions and knowledge exchanges with experts in the field, and also to connect and raise awareness about circularity. In that sense, I must say the title of the first webinar was well chosen. We're trying to explore the future of agriculture and the role of the circular economy. As highlighted today, agriculture in South Africa is not just about food production. Even with a relatively small share of the GDP, we've seen that it is an important part of the economy, and it is important for food security. Henry already indicated the massive impact on job creation. And given the water scarcity issues in South Africa and climate challenges that are coming towards us, it's also essential that we rethink and adjust our approach to agriculture. And we have to consider its close ties with water resources. So we have heard today that circular agriculture is about a shift towards more sustainable practices by focusing on minimizing waste and maximizing resource efficiency. In South Africa, we need to assess how circular our agricultural sector currently is, and potentially find better ways to further integrate circularity principles. So we, as the Green Economy Transformation Project, are supporting decision makers not only in South Africa, also in Argentina, Costa Rica, and Indonesia. And you can tell from the countries we want to drive a South-South exchange of best practices. So I'm hoping our project colleagues could join today's webinar, even with the challenge of different time zones and potential impact on their sleep schedules. But yeah, since our work with GET aligns closely with the circular economy principles, and we are trying to emphasize sustainable resource use and waste reduction through transformative practices, I am personally, and I think everyone in my team, really looking forward to the upcoming webinars and finally our in-person event in the end of the year. I'm pretty sure that it will be a good chance to network and also get to know each other in person. So just to remind you again, and I think we can't mention it often enough, we will have a webinar on the 5th of September, so next week on mining, on the 11th of October on manufacturing, on the 24th of October on energy, and then last but not least, our in-person conference at the end of the year. With these dates in mind, I really want to thank our partner DFFE, our speakers of today, and ACEN to organize this successful first webinar. and of course all of our very active participants. I've barely seen a whiteboard with that much information. And yeah, we will hopefully see you again next week, and then in our upcoming webinars. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Marianne. And here is the link. If you want to follow it to join our next one, please do. And the recording will be shared with you. Katarina, any final words from yourself?
No, I think I'm very happy how the engagement today went, and very pleased to see so many different people and engaged stakeholders online. And of course, thank you to all the speakers that participated today as well, and my team. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.